Hey YouTube, I'm Sergeant Indy. Welcome back to my turn-based strategy tutorial for GameMaker Studio. This video, we're going to add our first characters to the equation. So let's start off with a sprite. Get up over here. I'm going to call it S-Hero. Edit sprite. Default size is fine. And we're going to get in here. Black on our left. Color on the right doesn't really matter. We're going to get the circle tool. And just a couple pixels away from the top left corner. Drag all the way down to, why is it still, boo, I'm still on, like, no opacity. Let's Control-Z that and try that again. Alright, so a couple pixels from the top left corner to a couple pixels from the bottom right corner. Just make a circle like that, and then we're going to get a blue and fill it in. Just like that. I'm going to do a brighter blue. There, I like that a little bit better. Okay, so why we're doing this is that this is going to sit on top of the node, and we still want to see the node's border around it. That's why we want that space all the way around like we've got. Green check out of here and there. The top left origin is fine. Again, we want this to sit pretty much exactly the same place the node is and sit right on top of it. So that's great. Green check out of here, and now we're going to make our actor object. So we're going to create an object and call it OActor. And this is going to be the parent object of all of our heroes. So it's going to hold on to all of its information. Actually, both good guys and bad guys. So let's make a create event. Drag in a block of code. And let's give it some of that information that it's going to need to function in our game. So the first couple things we're going to add to this is grid X equals 0. Grid Y equals 0. And name equals error. Now, this isn't really necessary, but I like to do stuff like this so that if we ever see its name pop up as error, we know that something went terribly wrong. Now, the grid X and grid Y, that's pretty much the same as what we do with the cursor and the hover node stuff. This is so the actor knows where it is in that map array. And the name is obviously for display purposes later. Okay, so green check out of here. And there, and now we're going to make the child object. So let's create another object. We'll call this one OHero. We're going to give it the S-Hero sprite, and we're going to make its parent OActor. That's that. All done. That's all we need here. It'll have a lot more stuff to do later, but for now, that's all we need. Green check out of here, and we're going to open up our node object that we made first video, go into its create event, and we're going to add the following. Occupant equals no one, passable equals true. I mentioned in the first video about how these node objects are going to hold more data later on, and this is an example of what kinds of data they'll use. This occupant variable here is so that the node knows who is standing there, and passable means that the node is able to be moved through or stood upon. So now we need to create our guys, our couple of heroes. For now, I'm just going to create them in the controller object. So let's green check out of here. Let's go into that game controller, into the create event, and straight down at the bottom, all the way even past where we create the cursor. Now, this is going to be a little bit ham-fisted for now. Next video, we'll do something a bit more elegant, so just bear with me on the brute force for just a little bit. So, with instance create 5 times grid size 5 times grid size. There we go. And OHero. Okay. Another paren, squiggly. All right. So what with does, right, is with lets us manipulate either an object or a whole slew of objects. In this case, we're doing with this thing that we're creating here right now, a hero. So with that, all of this code will be run as if this instance is running that code. So grid X, we're going to set that to 5 because that's where we're creating it. That's what this 5 times grid size is. We're creating it at 5, 5 on our map array, on our grid. So grid X equals 5, grid Y equals 5, name equals Sandy, and then map grid X, grid Y, there we go, capital Y, important, dot occupant equals ID. So we're telling it where it is in the map array, we're setting their name to something other than error, and we're telling the actual map array, hey, this node, its occupant variable, that's me, I'm standing there. Now we're going to do the same thing again. So let's just go ahead and copy all of this. Control-C, Control-V. And in here, we're going to create another hero. So at 5 and, let's call it 5 and 8. So 5 and 8. And then we're going to set this one's name to Danny. All right, so now we've got to make sure that this is working out all right. And we can't really check to make sure that this is working out right now, so we're going to put in some more debug information to our cursor. So another second, go ahead and pause if you're falling behind. And then when you're done, green check out of here. Let's go into our cursor's draw event. All right, now in here, we do this hover node stuff, and we're checking, okay, grid X, grid Y, we got all of that, right? Let's add something to this. So let's add plus, and then that. Actually, let's do ahead space equals space. Okay, so this will add at the end of our grid X, grid Y, another, just like we did the slash earlier, we're adding an equal sign. All right, and then now down here, we're going to do if, what am I doing? Temp node. If hover node dot occupant doesn't equal no one, then temp text plus equals hover node dot occupant dot name, and then if there is no one standing there, so we'll have an else, then temp text plus equals no one. Great. So let's talk about this real briefly. This part right here, and like I said before, these periods will allow you to access things. So hover node holds on to the ID of the node we're hovering over. And then we want to access dot its occupant. Well, its occupant is another ID. So now we've gone from handling the hover node to handling whoever is standing there to accessing their name variable. Now, this is a little ugly. I'm not going to lie to you. But honestly, that's turn-based strategy. It's data this, data that, data everywhere. It's trying to get multiple pieces of data working together, poking at each other's variables to produce a desirable outcome. Temp text plus equals hover node dot occupant dot name is, well, that's a little ugly, but it's really not that bad. See, sometimes you can go round in circles with something as crazy as like, this node's occupant, what's their target's name, and like this dot that dot other things. And you could do a simple form of concatenation. Like if we didn't want to do that, you could do something like temp text equals hover node dot occupant, and then temp text equals temp text dot name. And this would sort of work kind of like a plus equals for data. Either way is fine. If it's stupid but it works, then it isn't stupid. But honestly, this is only one line, and I think it's pretty easy to follow. Okay, we got the hover node. We want its occupant, and then we got its name. Not that bad. All right, so now this thing in total will show like grid X slash grid Y, and then either the occupant's name or no one. All done. Great. So before we fire up a game, we've just added a few objects to the mix here. The draw layers aren't going to play nice, so let's green check out of here. And before I set this depth to -3, how things draw is in order of their depth. So things with a high depth, like 1,000, draw first, and then it counts down. And when it hits 0, it starts going negative. So negative numbers are drawn on top of positive numbers, and so forth. Like if we changed another object to -5, it would be drawn on top of the cursor. So our actor, our hero, our node are all currently on the same layer, and that means they're probably not going to play nice with each other. So what we could do is we could set our actor and hero to -1 to make sure they're on top of the nodes, but really the nodes are pretty much going to be at the bottom. So what I'd rather do is go into our node object and we'll set its depth to 1. So that way our nodes will all draw at 1. And then our hero will draw at 0. And our cursor will then draw at -3. So nodes, heroes on top, cursor on top of that. And that way everything we make from now on will draw, well, and so long as our node is at 1, everything we make from here on out will be drawn on top of it by default at 0. And I think that's just the easiest way to go. So let's fire our game up real quick and see what's happening. Here it comes. Okay, great. So here's what we're looking at. We can, nobody's standing on either of these. Oh, Sandy's standing there. Danny's standing there. Great. I mean, it's not that complicated. We didn't really add that many moving parts, but we could see our 2 good guys here, and we can mouse over and see everybody else is empty. Now we need to go back into the code and see about moving our heroes with some basic mouse controls. What we're going to do is we're going to set up left click to select a hero, and then right click to place them on another square. Not that complicated, but baby steps. We'll get to more complicated stuff later. So let's go to the create event of our cursor. Green check, or corner, get rid of that. Go into our cursor, create event, and let's add another variable here, something else to play with. Let's make selected actor equals no one. Okay, now we'll head into its step event. We've got quite a bit of work to do there. So step event, we're just going to go down below all of this stuff, and we're going to have our actor selection method be just a left click event. So if mouse check button pressed MB left, and then that's 2 parens out of that and down there like that. Okay, so if hover node dot occupant doesn't equal no one, selected actor equals hover node dot occupant, and again that will store the ID of the occupant, so Sandy or Danny, into our hover node or into our selected actor variable so we can fiddle with it later. And then else selected actor equals no one. So in this case we can click on someone, and if we don't want, I don't want Sandy selected, we could just click on an empty square and it'll reset it back to no one. Great. Now we need a function to move the actor somewhere else on the map. For this, keep it simple, we're going to use the right click. So this isn't going to be particularly elegant right now. We're just going to brute force some variables. Later, the actors will have their own movement ranges. They'll have a value of how far they can move, and they will, when you right click, they'll move towards the selected node on a path. But that's a whole can of worms. Pathfinding will probably take, well, actually, it will definitely take me 2 videos to explain and then code. So all we're doing here is we're plugging in some basic mouse functionality to ensure that our chassis is sound so it can handle all of that stuff later. So essentially, we're just going to teleport our selected actor wherever we right click. So if mouse check button pressed MB right, 2 parens and a squiggly. I think this is a curly brace. I call it a squiggly. Might be a bad habit. Don't care. So if selected actor doesn't equal no one, and hover node dot occupant equals no one, and hover node dot passable. And now, okay, so I could type hover node dot passable equals true, but if all we're checking is just a true-false thing, hover node dot passable, like that, all by itself, this is essentially the same thing. We're checking, hey, is this true? If this is true, then great. And if we wanted to check if it was false, we just do an exclamation point. So really, the equals true, it's not necessary in this case. So I'm just going to leave it off. Go back for there. More squigglies. Okay. So we only want to move our actor. Well, obviously, we need to have an actor selected in order to move anything, right? Otherwise, we'll throw some sort of error. And then we don't want to move Danny where Sandy's standing. That's crazy. You can't do that. You end up like The Fly. It'll be Sandy and Danny all merged together in some sort of freakish Rick and Morty teleportation accident or something like that. That's not actually what happened. What would actually happen is that, say if I move Danny on Sandy's square, it would completely overwrite Sandy's data, and then she's just sort of this ghost in the machine. We can't access or move her at all, since everything really takes place on that map grid. And so hover node passable, this doesn't do anything yet. Eventually we'll have walls, and those walls will not be passable. And you can't move Danny into a wall. That'd be silly. So, now we have some things to do. I'm going to quick comment. So first, clear the node of selected actor. And how we're going to do that is map selected actor.gridx selected actor.gridY. So again, the actor knows where the actor is standing, so we'll access the actor's gridx and gridY in order to change this variable. And obviously we're changing the occupant to no one. And then we've got to update selected actor's position and information. So how we're going to do this is selected actor.gridx equals gridx, because again, the cursor's moving the cursor's gridx and gridY is set to wherever it's hovering over. So we can just update wherever the selected actor thinks he is to wherever the cursor currently is. And we're going to do that again for the gridY, obviously. Equals gridY. Great. I didn't give myself space to work with. Let's give ourselves space to work with, and let's move this whole mouse right-click thing up to the top so it's easier to read. Okay. Selected actor dot x equals hover node dot x. Selected actor dot y equals hover node dot y, and obviously this works kind of the same way. The hover node is whatever we're hovering over, and since these sprites are essentially made with their origins to fit right on top of each other, we can just move the actor right there. And then finally, we need to update the new node's occupant status. So the new node needs to know it's got an occupant. So hover node dot occupant equals selected actor. Okay. I'm going to throw an else in here real quick, right here. So if all of this is true, we'll move our actor. Else, I like to selected actor equals no one. So if you try to make an invalid move, it'll just clear the selected actor out. I tend to like that in these kinds of games. I don't know why, personal preference, but that's where we're coding it. So this should be set. We can close this out. Now let's head back into our cursor's draw event for one more little bit of data to display. So if we got someone selected, we want to display their name in the bottom left corner while they're selected so that we know who we have selected. And it's just sort of a reminder as to which actor we're currently working with. So let's add here. And let's give myself bit more room to work with too. Again, I really like keeping my text in the top-ish bit of the screen. I think it's easier to read for everybody at home. That's how I prefer to watch these sorts of things anyway. So if selected actor doesn't equal no one, so if we have someone selected, temp text equals selected actor dot name. Pretty simple. We're going to do a big black rectangle again, this time starting in the bottom left corner and going from there. But going to be pretty similar to this stuff up here. Draw a rectangle. We're going to do 0, so all the way at the left. And then we want this to start at room height, so all the way at the bottom. And we're going to go to string width, temp text. We're going to go to room height minus string height, temp text. And of course, the last variable false, because we want this to be a full black rectangle, and I completely forgot, well, we want it to be a black rectangle, right? So draw set color, C_black, great. And then now obviously we want to draw set color, C_white. And now I know from experience that the default font is about 16 pixels high, so we're just going to run with that. So draw text, start at 0x, and then we're going to go room height minus 16, temp text. Although I just realized we could do, why am I doing this at negative 16? I mean, again, I know from experience the default text font height is about 16 pixels, but we could just do string height here again. Yeah, no, that's the much smarter way to do it in case we end up changing our font or whatever. All right, so now we can run the game and let's see what we've got. Green check out of here and there. Run the game. Cross our fingers. I probably made a typo somewhere, and that's fine. Everybody makes mistakes. So let's select Sandy. Let's select our heroine here. Let's left-click her. Now we have Sandy selected. That shows in the bottom left. That's great. Let's right-click on Danny, and it deselected Sandy. Danny's still standing there. Sandy's still standing there. That's great. That's working. Let's left-click Danny, and let's move him here. Okay, so he's updated. One minor mistake. I mean, I still have Danny selected, so I can keep right-clicking and moving him around. I don't like that. Let's continue demonstrating, but then we're gonna change that. So I've still got Danny selected, and that's bothersome to me, but whatever. He's not here is the important part. If we look in the top left corner, that's no one, and all the other places I've moved Danny to are also no one. If I right-click him here, that's no one. So that's working. Our Danny's data is here. That's where we want him. Danny's object is here. That's where we want him. That's working great. And I can left-click, select Sandy, left-click, select Danny. All of this is working great. The only thing that I want to change is to make it so that when we move, we deselect. Because that's generally how these games work. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter. It's working. Everything's working great. Everything looks like it's working on my end, so take a few minutes to fool around with that and see if you've got anything different. If not, rewind and try to see what went wrong. Next video, we're going to have a more elegant way to place actors in the game, as well as a way to handle placing terrain like walls or other obstacles. We'll also probably make it so you deselect when you move somebody. At any rate, if you're enjoying the tutorial so far, be sure to like, subscribe, or follow me on Twitter at Sergeant Indy. Any of those things really help me out. Feel free to leave a comment below if you're having trouble or just want to say hello. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.